This is the Hohem iSteady V3, a sub $150 smartphone gimbal. Now, I found some creative and unique ways to use this gimbal, and believe me, before I bought it, I watched a ton of reviews, and none of them mentioned the major flaws or features that make this gimbal punch far above its weight. Let me show you. So why did I, a 3D avatar, buy a gimbal? Well, in the process of creating videos like this, I discovered that the app I use to capture footage disables all the phone's built-in stabilization. And sometimes I prefer a more handheld look, but without the built-in stabilization we take for granted in modern smartphones, footage straight out of the app ended up very shaky. So a gimbal seemed like a good solution. And the iSteady V3 stabilizes footage better than handheld, but not perfectly. The results are an improvement, but still a bit too shaky for my liking. That could improve with practice. However, my use case also serves as a torture test for the gimbal, since it's responsible for all the stabilization. If you're using a regular app with built-in stabilization, you'll likely see better results. I'll admit the performance was slightly disappointing, and I wonder if other brands or more expensive models might perform better, but they don't offer the 3 killer features that make this gimbal stand out, and make me recommend it for some really creative uses. I'll rank these from the least to the most creative, and by the time we get to point 3, we'll be doing some crazy things. The first standout feature is the AI tracking module. Unlike most gimbals, this one doesn't rely on an app to track your subject. That's a huge deal. I used my iPhone 15 Pro Max to shoot this video, and the tracking worked flawlessly. This meant I could use my favorite professional apps, like the Blackmagic camera app for shooting Apple Log, or Omnificent for VFX shots like the ones you're watching now. For Android users, this is even more important, since app support for gimbals can vary wildly across devices. That said, the AI tracking has limitations. It only tracks faces, not objects, and it's less precise than app-based tracking. The module can also come loose if you're not careful. For second killer feature, the detachable remote control. This little panel pops right off the gimbal, letting you control its motion wirelessly. For serious filming, this is a game changer. It allows you to frame shots without touching your phone or add subtle motion to a shot while filming. AI tracking is nice, but when you're aiming for cinematic precision or creative control, manual framing is essential. This feature opens up so many possibilities and is something I've never seen in other gimbals at this price point. The only downside, since it's detachable, it's easy to misplace. It also lacks the A to B motion tracking available on the M6. Still, for the price, this feature alone makes the V3 stand out. Now for the third and most surprising reason I love this gimbal, it's hackable. Remember how I said the AI is a bit dumb? That turns out to be a blessing in disguise. For example, you can show the AI tracking module a face on an iPad and it'll start tracking the iPad. That might sound pointless. What good is filming a face on an iPad? Since the tracking is done by the gimbal, not your phone's app, you can get really creative. You can film in one direction while pointing the tracker somewhere else. And of course, you don't need an iPad. You could also just use a piece of paper. Another way it's hackable. Competing gimbals often use magnetic systems that limit you to phones. As long as it fits within the weight limit, the iSteady V3 will stabilize and control it. I've even used it with a GoPro, essentially turning it into a GoPro stabilizer. Here's an even crazier idea. You could loop a video of yourself on a TV that makes the gimbal track you, and boom, you would have repeatable motion control. That's a feature even most expensive gimbals don't offer. And since the AI thinks my iPad is a human, I don't see why it wouldn't think a TV is one too. Would that work? Give a like if you want me to test it. But maybe now we're getting a bit too creative, and we need to come back to earth. The iSteady V3 isn't perfect. The build quality is decent, plastic, but sturdy. I've used it in snow, and it got a little wet, but it still works fine, so it seems to be somewhat water resistant. The learning curve is steeper than with other gimbals, partly because it doesn't hold your hand as much. Its flaws, like limited AI tracking, turn into strengths for creative users, but it does take time to master. So, is the Hohem iSteady V3 worth it? It depends if you're into professional smartphone cinematography and hate the idea of relying on the gimbal manufacturer's app, or if you're a creative type who loves experimenting, it gives you quirks and capabilities you won't find elsewhere. It's also a great choice for Android users. Even though it's advertised as an iPhone gimbal, it worked well with my old Android phone because its app-free nature makes it versatile, letting you use the best camera apps for your phone rather than the gimbal's app, which might not be optimized for your device. But it's not ideal if you want something easy to use or if stabilization and top-notch tracking are your top priorities. And just to be clear, this video is not sponsored by Hohem. Many other reviews are, but I only have 500 subscribers, so no one really cares about me yet. I bought this with my own money, and I don't care whether you buy this or another gimbal. But if you're interested, I have one last pro tip. Check for coupon codes. I got one by adding it to my cart and waiting. That might be worth a try, or can check the description of my video. I'll add coupon codes if I find them. So, what do you think? Got any questions about the Hohem iSteady V3? Let me know in the comments.